baby. Give it a baby. Ooh. Give it those. Give it those toes. Give it those toes. Give it your baby. Give it your baby. Give it your baby.
Hard to imagine how this child's death could be any more traumatic.
The 29-year-old father conducted multiple Google searches, including how do you know if a baby is dead, in the hour after she stopped breathing before ever calling 911.
Every year, thousands of children face unimaginable hardships. But some stories are so devastating that they demand our attention. Not for shock value, but to remind us why protecting the most vulnerable is so important. Today, I'll tell you about one of the most heartbreaking cases of a parent's failure to protect their child. A case that deeply shook the nation. Before we begin, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave a comment with your city. Also, if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. It really helps keep these stories coming. A quick note before we start. This video discusses real events that may be upsetting to some viewers. The story is told with the utmost respect for the victims and is intended for educational purposes. If you find such topics distressing, you may want to skip this episode. All information is based on official court records and verified sources. In a quiet Pennsylvania town, the story of a young couple, Zara Scruggs and Austin Kamal Stevens, began like many others, with chance meetings, mutual attraction, and shared plans for the future. But over time, things changed. The relationship cooled, and they eventually parted ways. Despite their breakup, Zara and Austin remained in contact, especially after learning they were expecting a child. Austin Stevens, 29, was an assistant coach for the Lower Providence Warriors youth football team and co-owner of a construction business called Black Diamond Construction. To those around him, he seemed like a well-respected and successful man. His colleagues valued his work, his neighbors greeted him warmly, and Zara's parents treated him with respect. Zara, in turn, was always close to her family. When she found out she was pregnant, her parents were incredibly supportive, excited to welcome their grandchild. And on December 1st, 2019, Zara Lynn Scruggs was born. From her very first days, Zara had a bright and lively personality. She was a happy baby, rarely cried, and quickly became the heart of the family. Her loved ones affectionately called her Moo, a nickname that stuck. Although Zara and Austin had separated, they agreed to share parenting responsibilities without going through the courts, trusting each other to do what was best for their daughter. Zara primarily lived with her mother and grandparents, but spent time with her father as well. To those around them, Austin seemed like a caring parent who was always eager to see his little girl. Zara was growing fast. She loved music and would sway along to any melody. She enjoyed swinging at the park, and her favorite toy was Elmo from Sesame Street. By October 2020, just shy of 10 months old, she was already pulling herself up and taking small steps while holding onto furniture. She had even started saying simple syllables, which would soon become her first words. Her mother loved capturing every special moment: Zara's smile, her laughter, her curiosity. One particular photo would later appear in news reports: a happy baby with a pink headband, her face full of joy. Then, on October 1st, 2020, Austin moved into a new apartment on Germantown Pike in Lower Providence. The place had just been rented and still lacked heating, hot water, and electricity. The indoor temperature was only around 59 degrees Celsius. Despite this, Austin decided to take Zara for the weekend. On the evening of October 3rd, 2020, he arrived at Zara's parents' home in Norristown to pick up his daughter. Her grandfather said goodbye, completely unaware it would be the last time he saw her. Erica, too, had no reason to worry. She trusted Austin as a father. What happened in that apartment over the next few hours remains unclear. But at approximately 10:40 p.m., Austin called 911, reporting that his daughter was unresponsive and struggling to breathe. When paramedics arrived, they found Zara lying on the bed, dressed in only a diaper. Her skin had turned pale and felt cold to the touch. Austin stood nearby, oddly calm, showing little emotion. As one of the paramedics began emergency efforts, he asked Austin to hand him medical equipment from his bag. What happened next left the first responders deeply unsettled. Stevens shrugged and handed over the wrong item, even though he had been told about his mistake. Zara was rushed to a medical center in Montgomery. Despite all efforts from medical professionals, at 12:12 a.m. on October 4, 2020, just under 2 hours after the emergency call, the young girl was declared deceased. Austin's reaction to the tragic news raised suspicions. He simply sighed, as though receiving insignificant information. This lack of emotional reaction caught the attention of the authorities and became the first red flag in the investigation. During questioning, Austin gave his account of the events. He claimed that he was bathing Zara when he briefly stepped away to the kitchen for a drink. In his absence, he heard a dull thud and assumed that Zara had struck her head on the bathtub. Upon returning, he found her unconscious, removed her from the water, wrapped her in a towel, and attempted to revive her. He then laid her on the bed to change her diaper and noticed her head falling back in a lifeless manner. Only then, he said, did he call for emergency assistance. However, the investigation revealed a far different and more disturbing reality. The forensic examination, conducted the following day, determined that Zara's passing was due to a head injury, and the case was classified as intentional harm. The report also indicated multiple concerning marks, pointing to a pattern of mistreatment. The medical findings directly conflicted with the father's claim of an accidental fall during bath time. The evidence soon indicated that Zara had suffered intentional harm. Medical personnel who transported her to the hospital provided authorities with findings that suggested mistreatment. The nature of her condition pointed to intentional actions rather than an accidental fall. Further investigation uncovered a concerning pattern. Authorities obtained a search warrant for Stevens' phone, revealing that between 9:27 p.m. and 10:22 p.m. on October 3rd, he had looked up multiple online queries related to infant medical emergencies and CPR procedures. During this period, Stevens was also engaged in conversations with 2 women on social media, discussing unrelated topics. Following the investigation, he was taken into custody for further questioning. He was charged with multiple offenses, including the unlawful death of a child, mistreatment, aggravated injury, and putting a child's safety at risk. In December 2020, the charges related to unlawful death were confirmed after forensic specialists conclusively determined that Zara's passing resulted from intentional blunt force impact to her head. A preliminary hearing took place on October 13, 2020. Following the prosecution's presentation of evidence, the judge concluded that there was sufficient cause to proceed to trial. The case was carefully prepared for court, with witnesses being questioned and evidence gathered. The trial officially began in March 2022, nearly a year and a half after the tragedy, which was not unusual due to the complexity of criminal cases and pandemic-related delays. The prosecution laid out its case over the course of 3 days. The jury heard testimonies from police officers, emergency medical staff, forensic experts, and reviewed physical evidence, including data from the defendant's phone. The prosecution portrayed Stevens as an individual who had intentionally harmed his daughter and failed to help her as she passed away. Key evidence included video recordings of Stevens' interrogation shortly after Zara's death, where his detached behavior raised further suspicion. The prosecution also pointed out that Stevens had been messaging another woman while his daughter was experiencing a medical emergency, highlighting his apparent lack of concern. The defense contended that the evidence did not conclusively prove intent, suggesting instead that the situation escalated due to a moment of poor judgment. They also referenced Stevens' online searches for CPR techniques, arguing that this demonstrated an effort to assist rather than deliberate harm. An expert witness for the defense acknowledged the head injury, but sought to dispute other charges. After 3 days of arguments, the case was handed over to the jury. It took them just 90 minutes to reach a verdict, an unusually quick decision for such a serious case, indicating the strength of the prosecution's evidence. In March 2022, the jury found Stevens guilty on all charges, including the most serious offense and putting a child at risk. The judge handed down the maximum sentence, ensuring that Stevens would remain behind bars for the rest of his life. He did not testify during the trial and chose to stay silent before the sentencing. Without a word, he accepted the decision and was escorted out of the courtroom by deputies to begin serving his sentence. The lead prosecutor stated that throughout his career, he had encountered many serious cases, but this one was especially unsettling. A father, responsible for his own child's well-being, had caused irreversible harm and showed no regret. The sentence ensured that Stevens would remain in a correctional facility for life, reflecting the gravity of the case and the justice sought for Zara and her family. For the community, this verdict brought a sense of reassurance, knowing that such actions would not be repeated. Even Stevens' parents could not support him after what had happened. His mother spoke out, expressing her deep disappointment and stating that neither she nor his father could stand by him. This case underscores the importance of protecting the most vulnerable members of society, serving as a sobering reminder that trust can sometimes be misplaced. While no verdict can change the past or ease the pain of those affected, the legal system took every step to ensure accountability. Rest in peace, little baby Zara.